County City Council for October 25th, 2021 is now in session. Roll call, please.
Council President, Mr. Arcaro,
Present.
Mr. Emery,
Here.
Mr. Goff,
Here.
Mr. Kozowski.
Here.
Mrs. Lightford. Here. Mr. Moiseo,
Here.
Mr. Prokowski,
Present.
City Manager, Mr. Hockaday,
Here.
Finance Director, Mr. Williams.
We stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, due to an oversight on my part, we have 3 meeting minutes to approve. And we will begin with the meeting minutes of September 20th, 2021. Are there any alterations or corrections? Motion?
I'll make a motion, Mr. Arcaro.
Second.
Mr. Arcaro.
Yes.
Mr. Emery.
Yes.
Mr. Goff.
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski.
Yes.
Mrs. Lightford.
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski.
Abstain.
In the meeting minutes for September 20th, 2021 are approved. Move on to the special meeting of October 4th, 2021. Is there any alterations or corrections? Motion?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Mr. Arcaro.
Yes.
Mr. Emery.
Yes.
Mr. Goff.
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski.
Yes.
Mrs. Lightford.
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski.
Abstain.
Okay, October 4th meeting minutes are approved. Move on to the October 12th meeting minutes. Are there any alterations or corrections?
Mr. Arcaro, I have 2 corrections.
Okay,
The first is on page 2, where we're discussing the engineering bid documents for the Buffalo Street. It says bridge, it should be sewer project.
Okay.
And on page 6, Mr. Goff, miscellaneous business stated that the road kind of Liberty Street east of, and it states Center Street needs to be fixed. It should be either State Route 7, east of State Route 7 or east of Mill Street. Either one of those would be acceptable.
okay, thank you. Okay, is there a motion?
Make a motion.
I'll second.
As amended.
Make a motion as amended.
Thank you.
Mr. Arcaro.
Yes.
Mr. Emery.
Yes.
Mr. Goff.
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski.
Yes.
Mrs. Lightford.
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski.
Yes.
Okay, the meeting minutes for October 12th have been approved. We have a couple of presentations tonight, and we will begin with an awards presentation. In chambers with us is Chief Lee with our Employee of the Month, which is firefighter paramedic Gage Janik. Would you come forward, please? So Connor, if you read this for the record, please.
Certificate of Achievement Employee of the Month, the employment employee for the month of October is firefighter EMTP Gage Janik. Mr. Janik has been a great asset to the fire department with his strong work ethic, excellent attitude, and his willingness to help the city at a moment's notice. Gage is always willing to learn and take on new responsibilities to expand his knowledge base about the job in the city of Pontiac. Second Council President John Arcaro, and Council Member Nicholas Prokowski.
Congratulations.
On behalf of the city council, we'd like to show you our appreciation for all that you do. Congratulations. Thank you.
Congratulations. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You can have it.
Take my gavel.
Yeah, I can take it back.
Our next presentation is a proclamation for Red Ribbon Week. So Connell, if you could read the whereases into the minutes, please.
Yes, from the office of the Pontiac City Council, whereas alcohol and other drug abuse in this nation has reached epidemic stages. Whereas it is imperative that visible, unified prevention education efforts by community members be launched to eliminate the demand for drugs. Whereas the National Family Partnership is sponsoring the National Red Ribbon Campaign, offering citizens the opportunity to demonstrate their commitment to drug-free lifestyles, which is no use of illegal drugs, no legal use of legal drugs. Whereas the National Red Ribbon Campaign will be celebrated in every community in America during Red Ribbon Week, October 23rd to the 31st. Whereas businesses, government entities, parents, law enforcement, media, medical, religious institutions, schools, senior citizens, service organizations, and youth will demonstrate their commitment to healthy, drug-free lifestyles by wearing and displaying red ribbons during this week-long campaign. Whereas the city of Pontiac, Ohio further commits its resources to ensure the success of the Red Ribbon Campaign. Therefore, be it resolved, the council of the city of Pontiac, Ohio does hereby proclaim October 23rd through the 31st as Red Ribbon Week and encourages its citizens to participate in drug prevention education activities, making a visible statement that we are strongly committed to a drug-free state. Signed by John J. R. Carroll, President of Council, this 25th day of October 2021.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. Citizen comments. Does anybody have any citizen comments? Okay, hearing none. Communications.
I have none this evening.
Does council have any communications? Okay, hearing none. Move on to reports of our administration, beginning with city manager, Mr. Hockaday.
Thank you, Council President Arcaro. Two things. One, I want to touch on Red Ribbon Week. One of the biggest things that we can all do is make sure that if we have medicine or we have family members that have medicine that was extra or left over, instead of throwing it in the trash or flushing it down the toilet, which is highly discouraged, that you do either of those. There are drop-off boxes up here at City Hall. It's open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week in the lobby of the police station. You can contact our police station anytime if you need to get rid of some old drugs rather than allowing those medications to fall into the wrong hands or unintentional hands. We also have a Sharps disposal container out front of City Hall. It's actually out on the sidewalk area. Instead of throwing them away in the garbage or allowing them to go to somebody else, if you need to get rid of them, you can get rid of them for free here at City Hall. During the pandemic, if we thought our drug problem and opiate problem in Ohio was bad before, it's at peak levels now as people struggle with either economic distress, financial distress, social distress, mental health distress. So we continue to see a lot of problems. We see a lot of people struggling with addiction, and there are resources out there. And if anybody wants help, they can certainly call my office. They can certainly reach out to our police department. They can reach out to the fire department. We're here to provide resources for anybody that would want those resources. On a slightly different note, this is the week that we're moving to the trash zones. I think for the most part, it's gone relatively smoothly. I know some people still have some questions, or if you have an issue with a hauler, I would encourage you to call my office, 593-7401. Not sure what zone you're in or what day of the week you're supposed to be on. We do have a second round of flyers that are going to be going out with the utility bills. Is just a kind of a full reminder, and unfortunately those are going to be out a little bit slower than the postcards that already went out a couple weeks ago. So everything is online. It's right on the front page of the city website, but if you're unsure and you don't want to look at any of that stuff, you can just call our office, 593-7401. We're happy to help you answer any questions or figure out any problems that you might be having with that transition. 3 zones, 3 days of the week. It'll be the same day of the week every day after this. So Moving on, we're kind of in the middle of our negotiating year, so we have quite a few collective bargaining agreements being negotiated now and in the coming weeks. We're hoping to be able to get a somewhat quick return on those, so we can add them into the formulation of our 2022 budget, which will be starting here with our first meeting in November. So next week, we'll start doing our capital budget pieces with council. In addition to that, we have quite a few projects still moving along here. I'm going to jump down to the ones that people are, kind of truly interested in. Chestnut Street Stormwater Phase 3. They're working on final road grading. There is a valve that is not working. That was not in the, it's just outside the original project area. It was not to be replaced, but it is broken. I've asked the contractor to go ahead and replace that as part of the project. It's probably 10 feet outside of the zone. So they're going to be doing that tomorrow. So they'll do that valve set, and then it'll hopefully, if it's dry enough on Wednesday and Thursday, it is still our intention at this point to pave Wednesday and Thursday of this week, so that road can be reopened. Of course, that is weather permitting. It's not a very forgiving weather calendar this week as it has been the last couple. In that same vein, the ODOT Route 20 project, they are not getting their grading done as quickly as they wanted. Some of it due to the wet conditions this week. So they have to finish grading, compacting subbase. They'll have to slip form that south curb. And as soon as those two items are done, they can pave the south lanes and reopen it to two-way traffic. I spoke with ODOT today. Some of the subbase can't be compacted if it's too wet or if it's too rainy. So I'm hoping they can finish that on Wednesday and Thursday, and then get that curb slip formed and get it paved and reopened. So Chestnut Street is still looking to conclude by the end of this week from a construction schedule. And it looks like Route 20 is going to at least fall into next week, if not next week, and maybe a little more depending on what the weather does. I started adding on my report the Broad Street reconstruction, and I'm calling it Broad Street construction with Madison Street. This is kind of a bigger, this is the ODOT Small Cities project that will replace the concrete roadbed from on Broad Street from State to Jackson. And then it'll also be replacing sidewalk, stormwater, street lighting along that corridor underneath the railroad underpass, as well as along Madison Street. And then it has some improvements that are wired into the Conneaut Public Library. So for the tentative time being, that's what I'm going to call it. You're not going to see anything super fun happen until after January 1st of 22. This is all going to be programmed into our budget for next year, and it'll probably be carried for at least 2 years within our operating budgets for the city for the replacement of both of those streets, as well as some underground infrastructures and utilities. So those projects are moving forward. There's a number of different elements. We'll dig into that a little bit next week, but you're going to start seeing that on our reports. I did have a follow-up with NNS Railroad and their bridge replacement. Really important to note that this is not a city project. It's a large project. So I want to make sure everybody here is aware of what it is. So my understanding is they do have it scheduled, and they're looking for permitting and road access, and they're probably going to do that this fall between now and the holidays. They're going to approach council for that access off of Old Main down there, and with the conditions that we've already stipulated to them. So I anticipate in the next week or two that they're going to send us something requesting for that access through the riverbed so they can reach the bottom of their bridge trestle. So that is a big project. They anticipate that taking a minimum of 2 years. We can get into that a little more. I know we already touched on it a little bit earlier this summer when we had some of those meetings with NNS. So That's a big project. And then I'm jumping down to the paddling enhancement grant / kayak launch ramp. We had our pre-con this last week. The contractor is prepared to start. There is one potential change to that. This project is going to be concluded this year with one exception, which is possibly the signage. The contractor's already said that the signage has a 4-month lead time at this juncture. So in order for us to close the project, we might remove the signage and just pay for the signage out of pocket and have it added next year when it comes in. So we'll have to play around with that a little bit. But with almost any of these projects now, we're seeing supply chain issues and disruption on the acquisition of materials for projects. But that project is going to be underway quite soon. 221 building rehab, the RFP, we're going to be scheduling our interviews with the full committee here. They're ready to present. So once we get our full committee together, the proposals are ready to have their interviews, and we'll take that project through the next step as well. We did see, I'm going to forget the address off the top of my head. I believe it was 290 Buffalo, which was the house adjacent to the Conneaut Public Library, was demoed last week with CDBG funds through the county. So it was nice to see that house that sat there vacant for probably the last 15 years finally come down. The bigger old apartment complex there that also belongs to the library, that will be in that first phase of the Broad Street and Madison Street reconstruction projects, and includes the demo dollars for that large structure as well. So those things continue to take a step forward, and that's all I'm going to touch on for tonight, unless there's any questions specifically.
I have 2 questions regarding the Route 20 West.
Yes.
So was there a contract deadline for that? And are they going to be any fines if this
Well,
continues to be protracted?
so the contracts on these are very complex, and I don't purport to be a contract expert. I believe they have through a certain date to get it completed. However, they have to be considered workable days. So if it's just an absolute downpour, then that doesn't count as a lost day. But if it does go beyond a certain point, yes, they can suffer what's called liquidated damages within a contract, which they have a per day fine for non-completion.
Okay. And then regarding the flyer that we're going to be sending out for the trash zones, we recommend that we include the map and the definition of the zones. 'Cause
Yes,
The
and it-
card that was sent out was a little ambiguous.
Yes,
If the
and
information was included might help some of the.
yes, and it does. It's a full page front and back, and it includes a full page map. We wanted to get something out quickly that we could order quickly, which was postcards, and postcards were a little cheaper. We actually ordered that same day the prints, and we literally just got them last week. It took a lot longer to get them than we were hoping because we have to order 5,000 of them for each resident, and they will be stuffed and they'll go out with the utility bills themselves, because just the postcards alone, I think we spent about $2,000 in postage getting the postcards out, purchased and sent. It's a significant cost. And then we also did the full page flyer, and we'll send them out with the utility bills. It doesn't cost us anything additionally to send those out. And it is a mirror of everything that is on the website, including the full map.
Okay. Any other questions or comments for the city manager? We move on to the finance director, Mr. Williams. Okay, move on to the law director, Mr. Smith. Okay. Okay, move on to reports of our committees. Anybody have a committee report? Okay, hearing none, liaison reports. Okay, hearing none there either. Move on to our ordinances for this evening. And we have ordinance 8820, which will remain on the table. And we have only one ordinance to consider in first reading. That is 9521.
An ordinance to amend the 2021 budget through appropriations and fund and interfund transfers attached here to and marked Exhibit A.
Mr. Williams.
We have a $7,000 increase in the general fund. Half of that is due to the 4 new officers that we've hired. There's pre-employment screenings, additional training, and the chief needed some additional monies for narcotics investigations. And then the health department has a new line for part of their accreditation process. It's $5,500 that they're requesting, so it's a total of $11,000. We have some new debt service that will be due in December of this year for the Route 20 West paving. Appropriating $43,000 in principal, $83,69.17 in interest. We're increasing that with a reduction in capital improvement. So the net impact on the street fund is 0 on that one. And then capital improvement, this is what we have to collect a little over 1% of our income tax that goes into a specific capital improvement fund. We tend to use this fund for miscellaneous capital items for the Public Works Department, but also any other capital that we may need around the city, such as sidewalk replacement, replacement of the trees downtown. I wanted to put an additional 10,000 in there. And, if Joe says, Mr. DeBell says, hey, I need a plow for this winter or something like that, we can use this money rather than having to wait to come back to council. So we can appropriate that in there. We also converted a portion of this capital improvement fund to a debt retirement fund for the Public Works Department. Some equipment that we had purchased there. So about half of it's being used as debt retirement and half of it's being used for capital. So the grand total is $21,000.
Okay. Any questions or comments for Mr. Williams? If not, is there a motion to proceed?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we waive the 3 reading rule on ordinance 9521.
So motion to suspend the 3 reading rule on ordinance 9521. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Carroll.
Yes.
Mr. Emery.
Yes.
Mr. Goff.
Yes.
Mr. Sexton.
Yes.
Mrs. Lightford.
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Mr. Costi.
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski, the 3 reading rule has been suspended.
I move we act on ordinance 9521.
So motion to act on ordinance 9521. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Carroll.
Yes.
Mr. Emery.
Yes.
Mr. Goff.
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski.
Yes.
Mrs. Lightford.
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Mr. Costi.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 9521 is passed. Now move on to unfinished and old business. Hearing none, move on to miscellaneous business.
Hockaday around at Center Cemetery, around there. It needs built up around it. Sidewalk. Slow.
So we're over there doing some tree removal at the cemetery. We did have a rather large tree come down in a storm several weeks ago. We needed a crane in there to move it out. And then there were a couple bad trees around the monument up front, the war monument. And so they're in the process of having some of those removed. Have no problems having the Public Works take a look at that when they're finished.
Okay,
That
thank you.
Okay.
Have they begun that?
My understanding is they were over there today. I did not get a chance to drive over at the end of the day today to see what happened and what didn't happen yet today.
Okay. The reason for asking is almost directly across to the west, on the west side of the driveway where that tree is down on top of all the monuments.
Uh-huh.
There's another tree that was taken down, had to be eons ago.
Okay.
And the trunk is still there.
Okay.
It's right behind the monument. Can't miss it. It's
Okay.
all overgrown now, so
I'll take
maybe
a-
they could get
Yeah.
that out there as well.
I'll take a look at that tomorrow.
Okay. Any other miscellaneous business? Okay, going for a record. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Mr. Carroll.
Yes.
Mr. Emery.
Yes.
Mr. Goff.
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski.
Yes.
Mr. Fleischer.
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski.
Yes.